My name's Don.
And I'm Peter.
And we are two plebs talking about... California.
This week in the DPRC.
Oh, yeah. You know, we had some old favorites around here.
Yeah?
And some running through line theme kind of thingies.
Things that keep popping up, yes.
They've been with us basically since day one of the DPRC.
Right.
Rent control is going to be back on the ballot in 2020.
Go fig. We said no last time. Well, you need to rethink that.
You voted wrong.
You voted wrong. This needs to be a thing.
Exactly. And so we've already started producing bills in the state legislature. And then if those don't work, we're going back to the people and telling them that we're going to get rent control.
Even though the people already said, no, don't do that.
Yeah, and it was about a 60-40 split.
Right.
It was pretty wide margin for California and progressive policy.
Right. And California said no.
Which, look, shocking to me.
But apparently they didn't spend enough time in the prisons getting votes?
Well, I don't know if our prisoners vote yet, but yeah, basically.
No, remember they were doing that during the 2018 election.
Not here.
Yeah, here in California.
That was a Florida thing.
Pretty sure it's California.
No.
Okay, whatever.
Anyway, moving along quickly. So, we're we have noticed that there's a big homeless problem, and if only we had rent control, everything would be fine.
How would it be fine? The majority of those people who are homeless don't have jobs or a means of income, and they wouldn't be able to afford a rent of $1 a month unless it was handed to them.
No. You don't understand. There's lots of people. This is Google's fault. They created all of that housing increase in price, and so now there's people living in their cars in the parking lot of Google, and that's the real housing problem. And if only there was rent control.
So Google moves into a location, sets up shop, and becomes an extremely successful business, needing a large number of employees, and the local demographic, apart from them, doesn't bother to fill in a supply for housing. It's Google's fault.
Yes.
No.
Well, and foolish you, because if you only knew that without changing the supply of housing, we're going to impose rent control, and then everything will be fine.
No, because the number of houses still hasn't changed. Last time I checked, there's not a lot in the way of empty housing to be filled in that area.
Well, every now and again you get one of these condemned buildings. Yeah? And then we could just put people in there.
Okay.
And then rent control. Eh?
So they want to fix up condemned buildings and turn it into housing?
No. There's no plan for that. But maybe you could.
Well, if someone decides that they want to make low-income housing, they can.
Can they? I think we've covered this before. The guy trying to build low-income housing in San Francisco for something like a decade, already 3 or 4 million in, and he hasn't even broke ground on the project yet?
Yeah. And?
No, they can't.
Well,
Clearly.
that seems to be the issue. So they're talking about putting rent control on hypothetical housing.
Oh, no. No. On actual housing.
And they think that this will somehow force more housing to show up?
Well...
Because the problem is they don't have enough.
No, the problem is that it's too expensive.
No, the problem is they don't have enough.
Oh. Well...
If they don't have enough housing, that's what causes the housing prices to skyrocket. Come on, I'm familiar with basic economics.
This seems like supply and demand, price mechanisms,
being a thing.
But we're all wrong. Supply and demand is not the problem. The problem is that rent is too high.
Okay.
And I'm not kidding, because these rent control policies go from we're going to, at a state level, effectively determine everybody's rent, down to, well, you could only raise your rent X amount per year.
Right.
And equally speaking, you have to give a big, long California-sized list of reasons to evict anyone ever for any reason.
Right. No, plenty of stuff I don't agree with.
Right. Well, be that as it may, this is the plan.
I understand that it's the plan, and this is how California just destroys itself.
Mm-hmm.
Because if you're going to start getting into the business of telling people what they can and cannot do with their own property...
Get into?
I know they've been there for a while. Or further into.
Sure.
Expanding the measures in question.
Mm-hmm.
People will stop doing any type of renting.
Yeah, probably.
And they will just sell them or leave them on the market for sale at these exuberant prices. And which no one gets service at this point in time.
Yeah, well, so New York has a big problem with this, where landlords just abandon the buildings. They don't sell them. They just abandon them, right?
Right.
And then leave. And then do anything not to have to deal with a rent-controlled building because you can't pay to repair it at the costs that the rent control is permitting you to charge, right?
Right.
So that's going to happen. But we've learned from last time, right? And so we don't want this big overarching policy. We want the state to determine rent control, but have local municipalities opt in. And that is going to make it a good plan.
How?
I don't know.
I mean, really, how? It doesn't change jack and squat.
No, not one bit.
You can. We're going to make this new law, and you can opt in if you want to. It still causes the exact same problem. People are just going to abandon these properties, and no one's going to live in them.
Yes, but it will only be for counties or individual cities, right, to opt into if they think they have a problem, which definitely won't be San Francisco and Los Angeles. Definitely not.
Right. the people with the most homeless are not going to opt in on this.
Oh, and ridiculous rents. Make no mistake. Their rents in the areas are ridiculous.
They are.
A couple $1,000 a month for one-bedroom studios studios.
Yes.
So, don't get me wrong. They're ridiculous. However, this ain't going to fix it.
No, it's not. You have to charge less. How about I charge absolutely nothing and let nobody in?
Right.
That's an option. Unless you can somehow take away that option from them.
Exactly. Right? And so, we're going to do this, by the way. It's going to happen.
I know it's going to happen. They keep forcing it onto the ballot in any shape, way, or form they can. And they're going to keep doing it until finally California says yes.
Well, yeah. Now, the thing here that is relevant, I think, we've covered a lot of homeless stories over the past year or two.
Right.
Like an inordinate amount. California's homeless population has been in the news more than I think ever.
Yeah. It keeps growing and growing.
And yet, it wasn't in the news. I mean, it was in the news for us.
Right.
But it wasn't in the national news in 2016 and 17?
No, it wasn't.
But after that rent control bill failed, it's been there pretty much nonstop.
Pretty much.
And we get a new panic-inducing thing about California's homeless population once every couple of weeks.
It's kind of like someone's telling us, no, you really need to pass this, despite the fact you said no previously.
Yeah. It's odd that way, isn't it?
Yeah.
Now, look, I don't have a direct link between the national news media and the people who want rent control, but it's a strange coincidence.
It is a strange coincidence.
On the other hand, what I do have a link to, and this is, I think, the best demonstration of California's incestuous progressivism.
Okay.
Because I don't even know how else to describe that. Because the largest contributor thus far to all the rent control advocates has been the AIDS Foundation, the big one, in Southern California. The AIDS Health Prevention and Services Foundation. They are not only the biggest, but as far as I can tell at the moment, the only major contributor to the plan to get this on the ballot in 2020. Now, if anyone can explain that to me, I will happily listen.
Well, these are AIDS advocates, yes.
Yeah.
The medications are so expensive, these people can't afford to have a house.
No.
No?
There's what they contributed, by the way, if that were the case, would have covered thousands of people
Right.
to have AIDS medication. Now, don't get me wrong, this is the same state where we're subsidizing that medication already, and
Right.
on and on and on it goes. So, is there an AIDS epidemic in the California homeless population I'm not aware of? And by the way, of all people on this planet, I think I would be aware.
Well, I mean, that's only if they piped up about it, but that would be maybe an indicator of that. I mean, we already know about the hepatitis epidemic.
Yeah, that's a different thing.
Right.
That's the kind that comes from the poops, not from the sex, though. I mean, it will go through the sex,
Well,
too.
no, I've already seen stories about, homeless prostitution and stuff like that, too.
Yeah, sure. But there's no information anywhere, as far as I can tell, about an AIDS epidemic among the homeless.
Well, maybe there is, and they're just trying to keep quiet about it.
That's not what those foundations do. They
Okay.
publicize... I mean, if you found a rat with
why?
AIDS...
Then why?
Good question.
They don't tell you why.
No, they don't. But back to Californians' incestuous progressivism.
Right.
Because both of those are progressive ideas.
They are.
And so, shock of shocks, they're doing things for each other. Now, when people talk about corruption and they whine because something people are trying to influence the government, I notice progressives don't have a problem with this.
No, of course not. They never have a problem with this. It's only a problem when it's a speed bump to them. But when it helps them, it's fine.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, that's a common theme we've seen all over the news for years.
Yes.
I mean, it's not news.
True it isn't. But we can't spend all day on rent control, even though I try every time we talk about it.
I know, you are very verbose about it.
Yeah. To other subjects that I love to talk about.
Right.
Forever. We have decided that the red flag laws of California are not good enough, and they need to be better.
Oh?
Now, for anyone who doesn't know, and I can't imagine how you watch this channel and don't, but if you don't, red flag laws in California are the premise that your family members or the police can go to a judge and go, this person is mentally unstable, and then they can just take your guns from you.
Right.
And at the moment, what that looks like is the cops confiscate the guns, they go to a judge, and they say, within 21 days, and they say, look, you need to have a hearing on this. The judge has a hearing within 21 days, and then determines whether or not to just keep those guns for up to a year.
Okay.
And apparently this is not enough, because the slippery slope does not exist.
Right. Okay, so what's going on now?
Well, now what we need is to have your local company that employs you, if you have been there for 1 year or more, and you have gotten permission from the company to tattle on it, whoever this is. Teachers, school officials of any variety, outside of teachers, or the aforementioned people.
Okay.
Can all demand that your guns be confiscated. You have to wait 21 days, up to 21 days before you have a hearing. And then after that hearing, they will keep your guns from 1 to 5 years.
I thought the red flag laws were to denote an immediate risk. Why up to 5 years? I mean, why even up to a year?
Well, presumably if you're a danger to yourself and others, you're going to need to, get some treatment or something, which is hilarious, by the way, because the ridiculousness here is if they take those guns, then you meet the qualification for 5150.
Right.
And if you are 5150, you can't have a gun for 5 to 7 years. Depends on where you're at. But it's one of the two, and I forget exactly how that line gets determined. So what are we doing with this anyway, right?
Right.
You do have to be enrolled and 5150'd. However, it's the same determination.
Okay.
But at least with the new red flag laws, you'll be able to go back every year and go, excuse me, Mr. Judge, can I have my constitutional rights? I mean, I know I didn't break a law, but is it okay if I have a Second Amendment right? And that judge, based solely on whatever determination he feels like, which, by the way, is being expanded.
Okay.
and clarified, but definitively expanded, can just go, no. And by the way, there is seemingly no recourse for this.
Of course not.
Still. So, dear Californians, if you want to have guns, don't get a job, don't go to school, wait till your family's dead.
Stay in your own hidey hole, isolated from everybody else in the world.
Right.
And then maybe you get to keep your guns. Because the police can still come in and say they need to take them.
They could, right? So, I don't know how you avoid that, but...
You don't.
Do that too.
I mean, but why would the police get that idea to begin with?
Well, as we have found out a couple of times in enforcement of red flag laws, because neighbors call the cops and go, that guy's crazy, and I know he has guns.
So the neighbors are already doing it.
The neighbors are, right? But the company isn't.
Right.
The schools aren't. Now, by the way, here's how ridiculous this policy proposal is. Even the LA Times is going, well, look, do those people not have access to phones? Because if they do, they can go, dear local police department, I think this person should be subject to red flag law kind of things, and the cops can come down and, you know, if the guy's wearing a tinfoil hat filled with feces or something and shooting guns into the air, they're probably going to go, you know, could you just give me those?
Right.
Anything less clear than that, you know, your mileage may vary, but it's California, so they're probably going to take them anyway.
Right.
However, for some reason, we need to explicitly outline these people as being able to
Because these
recommend
people,
they be taken.
But who would these people recommend it to begin with?
Well, presumably the cops.
Right.
However, here's the differentiation and what no one is seemingly paying any attention to. Right now, in the end, you have to go to the cops, generally speaking. Even family members have to go to the cops, right?
Right.
They don't just get to walk in and take your stuff.
That was an assumption on my part.
Right. However, when they say other government officials can do this, you end up with the same sort of thing that we get with Child Protective Services.
Oh.
Because CPS doesn't actually take your kids 9 days out of 10. They show up with a sheriff or local PD.
Right.
And they go, I have made the determination. You go take it.
Ooh.
Yeah.
That does not sound good.
Nope. But it's the only differentiation that makes any sense because, by the way, once again, nothing's stopping them from calling right now and going, hey, I think this is a thing.
Right. Other than now, he's like, no, I've already made the determination to take them.
What other line is there?
I don't know.
Mm-hmm. Because this is how we do this sort of thing in California. Because the government, just unto itself, right, if the state, specifically Sacramento, came down and went, take his guns, there might be some Second Amendment argument. But just like this whole Internet Bill of Rights thing and everything else, as long as we can diffuse the responsibility to preferably private entities, but, you know, something school teachers.
Right.
Then the cops didn't do it. It was this other entity. You have a problem with them. Not me.
Right. I was just following the rules.
Exactly.
Or as
had to.
Or as some group of people were known a long time ago were saying, I was just following orders.
Good to be. I mean, I can't wait till we get Sacramento down to The Hague, but
I was just following orders, boss.
And look, that's where we're at, right? Which, by the way, is also why you see a lot of pushback in California about a lot of these red flag laws, because cops are like, do I have to? You know what you've told me is guy is crazy, guy has gun. And you want me to do what about it?
Take the gun away.
Right. I mean,
we're going to describe what is a potentially life-threatening situation.
Yeah.
And you have to go in and incite
And
action.
shock of shocks, cops don't want to do it.
Right.
No less, it is happening, right?
Oh, of course it is.
And it's happening in quite a few places, but most of them in California.
Yes.
Shock of shocks. And so, we need to expand how often it happens. And by the way, if anyone doesn't remember, all of this comes from Dylan Roof.
Yeah.
Because he posted videos online and his parents called the cops and the cops were like, what do you want us to do about it? No. And then he shot people. Therefore.
Right.
And so now, maybe a teacher will notice, maybe a coworker will notice. Well, this is the state of progressivism or get out.
Well, right. No. This is a situation of, well, someone should notice, and now everyone has the ability to do something about it.
Yeah.
Whether the action is warranted or not.
And so, this leaves the question, of course, what happens if your company is anti-gun? And by the way, that's becoming a thing.
I know it is.
Do they get to just go, well, we have an employee, go take his guns?
Right. Because, I mean, the fact that people lie is not taken into account.
No, that would never happen. So presumably that's what the hearings are for, right?
Right.
Is you go in and explain to an anti-gun judge in an anti-gun state why you have guns and are not crazy.
Right. And a lot of those people have the mentality of, you want to own guns, you're obviously crazy.
Clearly. Right?
Because nobody in their right mind would want something so dangerous around them.
Yeah. And this is the kind of, this is the point, and to the best of my knowledge, the study of if you have a gun, you're more likely to be killed with your own gun, got into a couple of these court hearings.
Right.
Because, see, this makes you a crazy person. On the other hand, if you don't have a gun, it is 0% likely that you will be killed with your own gun.
It's an asinine point to bring up.
It is. And yet, these are the things that are getting brought into these show trials. Because that's what they are.
Right. No, they are.
We are inventing the secret police here. And by the way, it's worth pausing to note how true that is. Your teachers, your doctors, your children, your employer, they should go to the police and they should tell them that you are a bad person. You might say that you're anti-revolutionary and there should be a trial.
Right.
And that trial should usually just result in you losing whatever the state doesn't want you to have. This is straight out of communist Russia.
It is.
The only thing left is to apply the death penalty at the end.
One more step. But we don't like that thing here.
Give us time. I guess back to that thing at The Hague.
Yeah.
Hey everybody. This is the last broadcast on this channel until after I move. The hope is August 1st we'll be back on air.
Yep.
Fingers crossed.
That's the plan, the hopes, the dreams.
Format of the show might change a lot because we won't be sitting in the back bedroom of my house anymore.
No, we'll be states away.
And we will. In the meantime, we're going to try and put out some content, but this is the last regularly scheduled thing that's going to happen. So, thank you everybody for watching, and I hope you stick with us through this.
Yep. Well, don't worry. We will be back. We will figure it out. And we will try to make it spicy.
Till then, bye everybody.
Bye.
Enjoy the Peatler outro.